Oh, we lost track of time there, Joe. Better late than never, though. Let's grab a drink. Let's happy hour.
Yeah, hello and welcome back to United Happy Hour. Just a warm cup of tea for me today, Pauly. It's gone a bit chilly again back over here in the UK. I hope everybody is well listening to us today. Well, where do we start on Manchester United? We've managed to put the Man City's title parade on hold. Well, probably not the way that we were hoping we were going to do it or the way that we expected that we may do it. But yeah, I suppose that's one thing that's come out this weekend, Pauly. But look, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that there wasn't a game this weekend, and there wasn't a game for obvious reasons. We've seen a massive protest from Manchester United fans. I'm not exactly sure of the number of people that made their way to Old Trafford in and around Manchester, making their voice heard at the weekend. It was rumoured there was going to be around about 10,000 people. I'm not quite sure there was that many people there. But first of all, Pauly, what do you make of this really random weekend, very sort of strange weekend, something that we expect to come in, but obviously it was kind of surreal to see the scenes and then to see the game be postponed as a result? Yeah,
weird. I was away for the weekend in a remote cabin that I wasn't off the grid. I had the channel. I had internet, but I learned this weekend that there is a difference between Wi-Fi and high-speed internet, in that they are not necessarily the same. So I was really off Twitter and everything, and it was Sunday morning when one of my friends said to me, "Is like, have you seen what's going on at Old Trafford?" And I was like, "No, I know that there's a lot of fans going to protest." He's like, "Yeah, they're on the field now." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I understand exactly what happened. There's a lot of pent up frustration here from these fans. It's years and years of the Glazers being bad owners. This isn't just the Super League. This isn't just we're not winning, because we've protested when we were winning. And we protested when the Glazers first arrived. This is years of pent up frustration. I think that's getting lost a little bit. Obviously, there's some media people that are going to spin it totally to this is bad, etc. But even the ones that are trying to understand nuance, because I think a little bit of it is inconsistent, and I think a little bit of what we're protesting is lost in the message. And some of the messaging is inconsistent, and that I think is dangerous. When you run out there and say, and hold up signs, or basically, or if you're being interviewed by someone in the media and you say, well, I'm protesting the Glazers that they're too cheap and they don't spend money in the transfer market, you lost your message right there, because anyone can look at that and say that is not true. And if you're trying to get the Glazers' attention, as soon as you say that, they discount everything else that you say, because they'll look at that and say, clear, you haven't done your homework. Second highest net spend in Europe. Second highest wage bill. It's not that they're not spending money. It's that they're not spending money well. They're not spending it on the right players. But if you say, oh, it's because they need to spend more money in the now they're just going to tune you out. So I think there's a lot of inconsistency in what these protests are. And have your say in the comments. Joe and I really today, we want to very much focus on the comments and interact with you more than regularly, more than we interact with ourselves. So have your say about what if I don't know if any of you were at Old Trafford, but say if you were at Old Trafford, what you would be there for.
Yeah, tell us what your message would be, how you think you can sort of get a message across effectively, because that's the other thing with protest, Pauly. It's one thing protesting, but how do you make it effective? How do you make it visible? Especially in a time where we've got no fans in stadiums at the moment, it is very difficult. You know, I'm going to ask you these questions as well, but I want people to tell us that, what's the next step from here? Because surely this can't be it. You know, you cannot just do this one protest and expect change. I don't think, you know, what we're reading, that's not on the Glazers' agenda. We're hearing a lot of news, Pauly, that they're looking, I know you tweeted about this earlier, they're looking to double their revenue in terms of double the value of the club, in terms of where it is now, to a point where they would get ready to maybe prepared to sell the club. But, you know, tell us, you know, the viewers out there, tell us what you think is the next step now, and what message should you be portraying out there? Because I've been uncomfortable with some of the things that I've seen, Pauly. Obviously, me and you have become really good friends doing things like this, and I did notice at the protest, the one last week, obviously the smaller one, you know, there was things like American flags getting burnt and things like that. I don't want to see things like that. I think that's a very dangerous sort of precedent, and I do think you're right what you're saying, Pauly. I think there were certain things, certain messages that fans were trying to get across that do sort of blur the lines a little bit. There was acts of violence that don't help the situation and not helping sort of get the message across either. So first of all, I'll say to you, Pauly, what happens now in terms of what is the message that we should be trying to get across, and what do you think is the best way to get our message across as of now? Like, how do we follow this up?
That is my question, actually. I can't answer that. That was gonna be my question to you. And I think it is partially the fact that I'm American and I grew up with American sports, and I just see things a little bit differently than what you have in the UK. That's not to say I'm naive to it. I am an all or nothing person. I dive in, I learn the history, I learn what, to me, you know, it's not just me just picking a random football team and watching them on TV. I've learned about English culture, and I have friends in the UK, so I understand, but I don't fully understand it the way that you do because you lived it. Yeah. But my question is, what are we fighting for? What change are you trying to bring about? Because there is inconsistency here. And I read this brilliant article yesterday that highlighted the hypocrisy of it. It was full of praise for United. It was completely on the fan side of they did a good job protesting, and the media who covered it did a bad job bad job. I have no problem with the protest. When you say, how do you get it heard? They were right. We canceled that game. That's how you get it heard. Protests are about disruption, and you can go in there with a million. Old Trafford holds 78,000 people. So you can go in there with 78,000 green and gold scarves and chant at the Glazers all you want, but you paid for your ticket. You bought some beers. You bought a pie. You're in the ground. The Glazers are making money off you. You're watching a game. You could scream for Ed Woodward to be fired against Burnley, but again, you're in the ground. You're watching the game. It's so easy to dismiss that. No, we canceled the game, and a lot of things are going to happen now because there's 3 weeks left in the season, and there's 2 teams that have to play 5 games on top of some other commitments. So we got to move a lot of things around. But what are we calling for? Because as this article pointed out, we're mad that the owners tried to create a thing that said spend more money to make more money, but we're also yelling at them spend money in the off season and in the summer, and we're arguing for that 50+1 model, but that will prevent you from spending money, and you're arguing for we want to bring back fair play. In terms of don't kill the pyramid, there should be this element of anybody can reach the Champions League and anybody can win it. But we want our owners to spend more money to ensure that we stay above West Ham. And if you set up that 50+1, that'll just maintain. We talked about this last week. That will just maintain the status quo and not so much help it become a level playing field anymore. So it's to me, there's just some inconsistency and some hypocrisy. Not necessarily that it's a bad thing, but I understand we want change, but I don't think anybody really falls through with it. Has a plan for what's next. We just want the Glazers to sell to a billionaire that will come in and spend his own money on it. And what typically happens, I read someone on Twitter had this great tweet or in a thread, and it was at the end was just typically bad owners sell to other bad owners. Like if the Glazers sell, you could easily end up with Stan Kroenke or Mike Ashley at the top. Like, assuming that somebody buys this club and inherits all that debt. Yeah. It's another big assumption to assume that suddenly they're going to start sinking money into the club.
Yeah, somebody who's got £7 billion to pump into this club, Pauly, or let's just say that as a ballpark figure. You feel like they're going to have the same intentions and thoughts around business as the people that already own it. So then you're tempted to say, let's be careful what we wish for, sort of thing. I just think, from my point of view, to just give my thoughts on this, Pauly, I think if there's to be another protest, I think there's two things that the fans need to sort of get on side, that they need on side with them, and that is the media. And that is the government now moving forward, Pauly. And the reason I say that is this comment that come in from Hella here was a really good one. She put problem is as well, and she's obviously living in Norway, but we're having the same issue as it over in the UK. I don't know about in the US. The TV was focused on the rioting, message lost, 2 minute slot on TV, where it looked like the whole Manc was under attack. And it is really interesting because I've been sarcastic today and I've said all those nasty protests and all that violence, all those scenes of violence, Pauly, there's actually up to now only been one person arrested from the whole protest. So, the media, they've especially Sky Sports News over here, were very specific about the sort of images that they showed from the protest, Pauly. They showed people being a pain towards the police. They showed people being aggressive in their behavior. They showed fans storming the stadium, all things that don't look good to the eye, if you know what I mean. And even at the time during the coverage on Sky Sports, who I think did a very good job at trying to keep us informed and kept going and getting the opinions of all the different pundits they had on the day, some of the questioning was more around, this is not right, this is not, it wasn't really supportive of those fans who were trying to protest. And I think that is one thing that we need to try and get the TV companies on board with this, but
no, you're not. It's not going to happen. It's not, even in the United States, even in the United States, they quickly took that angle to the rioters, and that's what draws the eyeballs to it. Remember, these are the TV companies need people to watch, and the United States, who the coverage is being brought to you by 3 English people, they're not Americans, but they were talking about some of this stuff as if it was 1980s hooliganism, and it's okay, like. This wouldn't even go to the doctor if like this was what happened in 1980s. They wouldn't even, the stewards might not even bother with it back compared to what we had back then. So, but the media is always going to sensationalize that. That's what they do because the media likes the status quo. The media are the people making money. Remember, everybody who always says that's not the right way to protest is a person who is happy with where they are. The system is working for them. Yeah. They don't want that's what I said before. Protest is about causing disruption because you need to disrupt something. And the people that say this isn't the right way to do it, they're sitting pretty. Yeah. They're the ones sitting pretty. They're happy with the current system. Yeah.
Look, Pauly, like I said, the other thing's the government, Pauly, because I don't think the 50+1 is something that the government's going to be able to do because obviously we operate in a free market here and also we'd have to renationalise the game. And we talked about this before. I don't think that's an option, but there has to be some reform and governance into the way that we owners buy clubs in this country from now on, and the way that, there has to be a change in the way that fans' voices can be heard, and things like the ESL, for example, that have sort of paled into significance a little bit from Man United point of view, because this is more about the last 16 years in the ESL. Well, things like that can't happen again. These things can't be pushed through on the quiet. That's where I think now we need more support if we're going to move forward. I do think there will be protests again. It does worry me.
We talked about it last week, and I don't think. What are you going to do? Put 2 fans on the board? They'll be outvoted. And also, if you open up, if a fan opens up the books and says, "Well, wait, we actually need this to make it financially viable," they might change their stance on this. it's a very difficult situation. But look, there's so many. This article I read, I forgot what clubs it brought up, but there's so many examples of down the league pyramid of businessmen buying clubs, and they don't do a good job. So just because you sell, Bolton and Macclesfield, just clubs near Manchester, that some of them are in dire situations because they did they came in and just freely spent money, and it doesn't work. You don't fully know what you're getting into, that it makes it on. Look, I am totally I am totally on board with the protest. Now, I hate the Glazers too, but I'm also just sitting here. I'm not as loud about it because I don't know what the other alternative is. And I also don't know I'm not in favor of a Saudi Arabian who's using the club to cover up all of his crimes against the people in Saudi Arabia. The human rights violations. Yeah. So I'm not in favor of that. And you could pass a fit and proper persons test to buy Manchester United. That doesn't mean you're going to start spending money freely. But I want to bring up this comment is from Alan. Like to see protests continue, but without the violence, property damage, because the media is going to go with that instead of focusing on 1,000+ peaceful protesters, which I think is more powerful. I think Alan's from the United States, but if he's not,
no, he is.
Alan, we see protests. We've seen many, many, many protests in the United States over the last year, and they are peaceful, and yet they are still more violent than what we saw at Old Trafford, where people get hurt. Now, some of that is the police hurting the people unnecessarily, etc. What happened at Old Trafford? What you said, 1 arrest, and what was it? 2 police officers got injured?
Yeah.
That is nothing.
Yeah, 2. Yeah.
That is nothing. And look, this is bad to say, but you need that. There needs to be a little collateral damage. I am extremely happy that there were no deaths and that these police officers have minor injuries, and that's it. But you need something to happen. If this is 1,000 people outside Old Trafford and they're just yelling and yelling and yelling, and then the team coach arrives and they clear a path and the team coach drives into the stadium and we kick off and play a football match, the protest's an afterthought.
Yeah.
You need it to get slightly out of hand. I'm not advocating for destroying property, etc. There's always going to be one or two, or probably in a group of this size, 30 to 40 bad apples. That will never be me. I'm way too much of a loser.
You're a nice guy for that. Yeah, no,
but you need that to make the statement. You need
I'm
that
very
to
angry at the Glazers, but I wouldn't dream of causing any damage or any wrong. That's not really. I'd like to have been there and to help support with the protest, but I would have been one of the peaceful ones. I'm not looking for trouble, Paulie. It's not. Doesn't do anything for me, and it's not ideal. But look, at the end of the day,
here's the thing though. From Hella, you can't take 51%. Correct. So you would need massive government reforms to do that, and it might kill the economy or have unintended consequences for the economy. We have the power of boycotting the sponsors. We do, but we also want a winning football team on the pitch. And let's call a spade here. They have their mistakes over the last 8 years have been on hiring the wrong managers and signing the wrong players. We are seeing now what happens. I'm sorry, but there's a massive siren going on in my backyard. As if I have a yard.
Carry on. Yeah.
We're seeing now the team going in the right direction because they have a manager taking them in the right direction, and they have players, and they shelled out big money for Harry Maguire because he said Harry Maguire is the number 1 guy that I need. And then he went to them in January and said, I need Bruno Fernandes. And they shelled out for that. And they could have easily said, we don't need to sign Edinson Cavani. That's expensive. We have Anthony Martial. You have this young kid, Mason Greenwood. And oh, by the way, you have Odi and Igalo. No, but we went out and signed him because it was too expensive to sign Jadon Sancho last year. In hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, And with the caveat of as long as you go back in for him this summer, it was a good financial move to not sign Sancho last summer because you're borrowing from future revenue that we don't know what that revenue is going to be. We were under the assumption that fans were coming back in October. They haven't come back yet. So if we would have went out and signed Sancho last summer, we could have put ourselves into more long-term financial hell. People think it's cut and dry. If we would have just went and signed Sancho last summer, we could go and sign Erling Haaland this summer. No, we wouldn't have the money to sign Erling Haaland this summer, and we might not have the money next summer. So by holding on to it for another year, we've put ourselves in a better situation. All the while, we've let the players that we have in the squad develop more. So with the caveat that you have to go back in this summer and sign Jadon Sancho, it wasn't a bad move to not sign him, but they have spent money. It's just you spent that money on Louis van Gaal and gave him a bunch of players that don't fit him. And then you spent money on Jose Mourinho and did all of his things. And here's Wolfeye. Pauly, it's not about signings.
Yes. Good,
it shouldn't be. But that's the thing is when people hold up signs and say that to reporters, that gets lost in the message. But what I'm trying to say is, yes, we could boycott the sponsors, as Hella suggested, but ultimately that ends up hurting the team that we still want them to win.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good point there that Wolfeye makes, and I know what you're trying to say as well, Paulie. But during that coverage on Sky Sports on Sunday, we did have Graham Souness, who was trying to bang this drum at exactly what you're saying, Paulie. The idea that they've spent £1 billion, over 700 million net spend, in the time that they've been here. They have invested in the club. They have, and they have put money into it. And then Graham Souness also going on to suggest that United are just doing this now because they're not doing well at the moment. He feels it's more of a protest frustration about where they are. But it was nice to see people like Jamie Carragher correcting him on Monday Night Football last night, telling him that let's not forget when this whole thing started, Paulie, in 2005, the fans actually formed a new football club because of the Glazers. There was the FC of Manchester, of United, obviously. Huge thing. In 2010, there was a massive Glazer protest, Paulie. Don't forget, before that, United had just won 3 league titles in a row. They'd been to a Champions League final the year before that, and they went to one the year after. We have protested during times of success for this football club, Paulie. So this isn't because United aren't doing very well at the moment. That is also, it's a factor, but that is not why they are protesting solely. People have to understand, and pundits like Graham Souness have to understand, this is something that's been boiling up for years, Paulie. And again, this is what I say about getting the media on side. We can't be having pundits with influence like Graham Souness saying things like this because it just, again, the message gets lost, Paulie. This is not about success that we're having on the pitch. This is about frustration that's been around ever since the guys bought the club, the way they bought the club, Paulie.
Yes, the way they bought the club and they heaped debt onto it. And that really hamstrung the club, but Sir Alex Ferguson was able to weather that storm.
Yeah.
And that was and it worked out perfectly that when Sir Alex Ferguson retired is also when they had restructured the debt and suddenly they had money to spend because everybody does go back to we sold Ronaldo and replaced him with Gabriel Obertan and Antonio Valencia. And you're right. You're right about that because that was when we had to pay a lot of that money back. And that was rough. Did we still win the league? Yes. We didn't win the league that first year. We lost by a point because Didier Drogba was a yard offside. Then we won the league the following year. We went to the Champions League final. Then we lost the league on goal differential, and then we won the league again.
Yeah.
And then after that, they were ready to spend money. They just spent it poorly. But here from Wolfeye, they let Old Trafford fall into disrepair. They didn't invest in the facilities. Bingo. That's it. That's what we need to focus it on because that's where they have really failed.
Yeah.
They've made
the area around the club as well. You look at what Manchester City have done to the east side of Manchester, and I hate to say it, Paulie, but they've regenerated that area. They put projects in place to improve the academy. I mean, that is almost become like a Man City world sort of thing. You know what I mean? It's incredible what they've done around there. But they will get benefits out of that down the line. And it's so frustrating because we know what they can do and we know what they need to do, Pauly, but they're just so resistant of it. And I don't understand why.
So this is from Kieran Maguire, who is an economist and really studies football financials. And what he wrote, this is from The Athletic this morning. Certainly in the years of the Glazer ownership, the debt in the early years, the debt did hamstring Sir Alex Ferguson. It's a testament to just how good he was that he still managed to deliver trophies. But the interest hasn't actually been an issue since he retired. Including the dividend payments to the Glazers, the club is around 40 million worse off than, say, Manchester City or Chelsea, but they are still Manchester United. They generate a lot more match day income and merchandise sales. It doesn't actually put them at a huge disadvantage. So this is the thing. I understand the way they took over the club and the early years that it did hamstring them and that hurt. But ultimately, the club is running itself. Does it bother me that they are not investing their own money? If the club could afford it, then that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is Old Trafford. That is something. The roof leaks. If it rains, the roof leaks. Like, we can make it bigger. Actually, I don't know how much bigger we can make it because you got that rail line right there.
Yeah, it's difficult to,
But you can make it better.
Corners you could expand on, Pauly, like they did a few years ago. They expanded a couple of corners. I think the other corners could be expanded as well, but that probably gives you about another 8,000, if that. You
can make that better. There need to be upgrades to Carrington. Is when it was built, it was the nicest place in the world. Now it's okay. They when they first came in, they completely neglected the academy, and that was a problem. But they have been investing in that heavily for the last 5-6 years, and we're starting to see it bear fruit. You look at the under 23s and all the talent that we have coming out of there, and already Mason Greenwood is in the team, but we're all excited about Shola Shortire and James Gardner, etc. Look at who came out of that academy before that. You hit a diamond in the rough in Marcus Rashford. The rest of it was Lingard, McTominay, Tyler Blackett, Paddy McNair. These players aren't even good enough to play in the Premier League anymore. So there was a complete deadness in the academy that they have now started investing in again. But it's Old Trafford, and I'm totally with everybody there. Is they need to invest something in Old Trafford, and if the club doesn't have enough money to pay for it, then they need to invest their own money. If the club does have enough money, then I don't care where the money. I personally do not care where the money comes from. It just needs to happen. So if like I said, if the club can't afford it, they can, and they're not doing that. But there was a comment before that really.
We had loads of comments. Could keep them coming in, guys.
So this one.
Carry on, Pauly. Sorry.
From Alan, part of why they want to be sponsors, we're back on the sponsors, is to be associated with a product viewed positively by customers, fans. But if they're associated with unpopular owners and a declining product, that'll change. And this goes back to those reports that we saw this morning of the Glazers. The current value of United is about $3.3 billion, and they have a plan to get it up to $7 billion. Well, we've maxed out the commercial revenue area of things. We've maxed out the broadcast area of things.
Yeah.
There's only one other way to boost up your value, and that is start freaking winning. Start winning. And because, Alan, the sponsors don't care if the owners are unpopular. But the reason that our sponsors are dropping, as Hella mentioned earlier in the show, and a couple other people have mentioned in the comments, the reason why Adidas is unhappy and is because we're not winning anymore. Is they signed up, they paid X amount of money a year to be associated with Manchester United because that's supposed to be the best, and they are not the best anymore. So if you want to boost up the club's value, you got to get back to being the best.
Yeah. And to do that, Pauly, they're going to have to speculate to accumulate, aren't they? They're going to have to invest in this team to make it good enough to start winning things again, and then in order to then reap the rewards from that when it does start winning again, if you know what I mean. So, take, for example, we don't know for sure because you can't tell, but if someone like a Jadon Sancho takes this team to a Premier League. You need to put that 80 million in to get Jadon Sancho in order to win the Premier League. That probably gives you about 130 back, if you know what I mean. This is how you have to do things. I mean, that's very simple terms and very simple maths, but this is the way that they're going to have to, like you say, if you want to be successful on the pitch, it's not just going to come with the current squad. They're going to have to invest more, but then hopefully, by winning Champions Leagues and winning Premier Leagues, they will make money that way. And then when you are more successful, you get more commercial people then getting back on board, because the reason we've got all these great commercial deals at the moment, Paulie, comes from the previous 26 years of success that we had under Sir Alex Ferguson. So you have to get that on the pitch. We're at the point now, I think, 8 years on from Alex Ferguson, well, longer, about 8 years on from Alex, where we are starting to, we can no longer keep living on our name. We need to get back to winning ways so that we can then use that commercial money again somewhere down the line in the next 10 years or so.
Right, because the broadcasting, that's tied to the league. So, look, in the United States, NBC pays for the league. They don't pay for Manchester United. So even if we don't watch, look, I need NBC to watch hockey. So they're still getting my money, even if I'm only going to watch Arsenal for some, So it's all the other, it's the Lego and the Chevrolet and the whatever scotch we sold and the DHL. That's where they want to be associated with the champions. So you need to get back to that level of champions. And guess what? As Alan says here,
sorry, we're all clicking, boys. Sorry,
is they're going to care because the Glazers are now actively harming their brand instead of positive. They are right now at this second. But like we said, there were protests in 2005. There were protests in 2010. There were protests. Remember that Burnley match in 2020, January of 2020. And what do the Glazers always do? They weather the storm. They lay low, they weather the storm, and you get everybody on Twitter saying, "Oh, don't stop! Like, don't stop! Remember who the real problem is." But then, and that happens on October 1st when Jadon Sancho doesn't arrive, and everybody says, "Don't forget in 3 weeks or in 3 months when Ollie's struggling, that's the Glazers are the issue because they didn't back him." But then you lose to. They already lost to Tottenham, but then you lose to Arsenal and you lose to Istanbul, and no one's talking about the Glazers anymore. They're talking about Ollie, and the storm will be weathered by the Glazers. But if United start winning, the Glazers aren't actively hurting their brand because the sponsors will understand. You may hate them, but if they're sitting there signing checks and putting a winning product on the field, that's good. That's good enough for them because money will talk. What boggles my mind, though, is ultimately, we all know, look, their end game is to sell in 20, 30 years. They're not really, unless they get an offer that they can't refuse sooner than that, they ain't going anywhere. But they really, part of the value of United is Old Trafford. And even if you get back to a winning product on the pitch, how can you sell a dilapidated asset like that? If you let Old Trafford fall into disrepair, that really hurts your value in terms of in terms of who's going to buy it. Remember, look, there's a reason that there are house flippers out there. Anybody, you get a lot more money for a house when you renovate it before you sell it, rather than being like, oh, it needs work, but this way you get to choose how it gets renovated. No. Yeah. You get a lot more money if you actually put in the money and sell it when it's all nice. So if they're worried about their asset and their investment, then freaking upgrade Old Trafford. That's a no-brainer. So that's really what bothers me the most is how they're letting this asset that is such a wonderful thing. Because remember, before Fenway came into Liverpool were talking about getting a new stadium. And Fenway Sports Group came in and said, well, no, Anfield is part of what makes Liverpool Liverpool. Anfield is part of what sells Liverpool. It's part of the fabric here. We're going to just make it nicer. They understood that. That's what the Glazers need to understand.
Well, I want to ask you, Pauly, as well, is quickly. I'm going to kind of move the conversation on a little bit, but just one last question on this is terms of 10 years, just over 10 years since we did the last protest. I just want to ask you, where have we been for the last 10 years, Pauly? Why has, we know now why we're protesting, because they've obviously accelerated it with all the ESL fallout and everything like that. That's understandable, but where have the fans been for the last 10 years? And is it bad that we haven't done anything like this for the last 10 years?
That's a really good question. And we saw on Twitter yesterday, ESPN in the States was covering it, and their feed cut out. They had their guys talking. They were criticizing the Glazers, and the feed cut out. And people tried to make it as if ESPN was censoring these guys. And it was a pre-taped segment. ESPN knew exactly what he was going to say. It was a pre-taped segment. They immediately apologized and put it online. And one of the things, it was John Champion and Taylor Twellman, which was great because it was an Englishman and an American, and you could play the roles of help me understand.
Yeah, like we're doing here a little bit. Yeah.
Taylor Twellman asked him point blank, if these owners go out there this summer, he used Erling Haaland, I will use Jadon Sancho, and they sign him. They spend £100 million on him and sign Jadon Sancho. Will the fans still be out on the field and in the concourses protesting? And John Champion said yes. He said, because this is bigger than that. And I believe him, but you made an excellent point. Where has everybody been for the last 10 years? Where were we when we signed Angel Di Maria? Because, by the way, we welcomed that signing, and we welcomed Radamel Falcao. We were really excited about that. Angel Di Maria was a joy to watch when he first got here. By the way, Bruno Fernandes this season is the first player to get as many assists in a season as Angel Di Maria did when he played for United, and he only played half a season.
Yeah.
So we welcomed Bastian Schweinsteiger. So you're right. Where have we been for the last 10 years? And if they go out and sign Jadon Sancho and bring in Declan Rice, will we be here? Will we be screaming in September?
That's the point we need to be, don't we, Pauly? That's the point. Look, we can talk all day, but that's where we need to be. Look, I want to move it on slightly now, Pauly, and just talk quick. It's still about the protest, but more around, get your thoughts on what I'm seeing a lot on social media, and people starting to panic now about what this means from a footballing side of things, Pauly, because one, I'm looking at the calendar and I'm wondering where this game's going to go. I was very surprised to hear that they maybe didn't reschedule it for 24 hours after on the Monday, or even for tonight, potentially, especially given...
I cannot fathom how this game wasn't scheduled for Monday.
Yeah.
And I don't get it at all.
But I'm looking now, Pauly, I'm looking at the rest of the calendar, and United and Liverpool don't have a free week together before the end of the season. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do this. And also, more to the point, Pauly, people are starting to be concerned about United getting dot points and other sort of sanctions. Should we really worry about that, Pauly? Because if you're really sort of wanting the Glazers out, should a point deduction bother you so much? You know what I mean? This is not about football. This is about getting the owner out. Where do you stand on all this? I know, we've worked hard to get second or whatever, but should people be sort of worrying about what happens from the footballing point of view? Or actually, is the main thing here that we just try and get a message across to the Glazers and get them out? Yeah,
because again, there's so much inconsistency.
Here we go. Perfect tweet that you put up. Yeah, go on.
There's so much inconsistency within the entire message. And this is about the long-term health of football. But what is the alternative? Because what people say is we're fighting for that fairness, but putting it, unless you start it again, 50+1 just locks in that City, United, Chelsea, and Liverpool are going to be at neck and shoulders above the rest. Tottenham will be in there because they'll make money off their stadium. Arsenal probably aren't getting back to the top. Leicester, forget it. It's just going to establish the status quo.
Yeah.
But yes, the club's failure here was on the lack of security.
They underestimated it, didn't they? And there was no really excuse for underestimating it, Paulie. We saw on Twitter all week long. We knew that this was going to be a big one. We knew it was all over Twitter. They were expecting 10,000 fans. I don't really know how the club underestimated it. It wasn't as if it was undercover information that nobody could find. Everyone knew that this was going to be a big protest.
But we've had things online before, and the turnout isn't as.
Yeah, but I think you need to prepare for the worst.
I agree with you. And look, last week I was arguing that, for certain things there have to be collateral damage, but this wasn't the club making a bad decision and the current players are the ones being punished. This is the fans. You got to find a way to punish the fans, but not the club. And
exactly,
a points deduction just doesn't make much sense in that regard. I mean, fans want the there should be a hefty fine, but fans keep arguing for things that ultimately, again, a fine isn't going to convince the Glazers to sell, and a fine and a points deduction to miss out on Europe isn't going to convince the Glazers to sell. Doing that might convince them, well, now we don't have the money to spend on players. And then that ends up hurting the club and the fans. And instead of selling in 25 years, it's now going to take 27 years to hit the target that we want. So there's give and take to everything. It seems like everybody, from what I gather with these protests and everything that I read, it just seems like everybody factors in the give and none of the, well, it could go the other way. Like we talk about all the time is you look at fans who look at United's upcoming run of fixtures and go, whoa, there's a good chance that in 4 weeks, if this happens and that happens and that happens, United could be outside the top 4. And it's like you factored in every possible scenario other than United might win their games.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what a fair punishment is. I think in terms of this match against Liverpool, I'm shocked it wasn't postponed until yesterday. We have seen plenty of times the team that plays in the Europa League gets the honor of, thanks to Sky, of playing Monday Night Football because they love the fact that they typically don't have the opportunity to do that. Because usually if you're in the Champions League, you can't play Monday nights and you can't play Friday nights. So they get to put you on in prime time. And the first match against Liverpool in the Jose Mourinho era was on a Monday. So we had a Europa League match. So I don't know if it was a question of, they say that they breached the dressing room and there were some COVID issues and they had touched the balls and contaminated them. So don't play the game at Old Trafford. Play the game where the women play or play the game at the Etihad. Take away that home game, and that's a fair punishment for United because, frankly, there are no fans anyway. So just be like, all right, you lost the ability. Your fans have cost you the ability to get dressed in your own dressing room, etc. And it's,
to be fair, Paulie, given the nature of that first leg win as well against Roma, I may have even been happy to play it tonight. I know there's only 2 games to that Roma game, but United could jiggle their squad, I think, enough to be able to play a game tonight and then maybe play Roma again on Thursday with some squad rotation. I don't know. Look, I know they probably can't take that first leg score into consideration when they're looking at fixture list. They can't just say, oh, well, United have won by 4 goals, so they can play this Liverpool game because it can put a weaker team out against Roma, because you can't do things like that. But, I just think there's been a couple of days dead and gone now that could have been used. I mean, people are saying in the comments the 15th, 16th is a rumoured date because I think Liverpool were due to play West Brom that midweek. They're thinking that they may move that Liverpool-West Brom fixture now to accommodate this fixture. It's caused a real mess, but I guess this is what people really wanted when they did the protest. They wanted to cause a mess. They wanted to cause disruption, so they're getting what they want. And it's obvious that the Premier League are having to think really hard about this, because if it was an easy decision, they'd have either played the game by now or we would have heard something by now, wouldn't we, Paulie?
Yeah, I heard people saying yesterday, broadcasters probably didn't want the game being moved to Monday. which is fair. There were 2 games yesterday, but then I found out it was a bank holiday, and I was like, well, that means you could kick it off in the afternoon and people still be able to watch. In fact, more people around the world will be able to watch if you kick that game off at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Then people said they don't want a repeat of yesterday, of fans coming back out and showing up. Well, won't that happen in 2 weeks? Can't the same thing happen in 2 weeks?
Yeah, in fact, I think people were planning a protest for the 15th, 16th anyway.
Here we go. It's on our show. As Hella said, the 15th, 16th is when the next demonstration is planned. So you can't just not play forever. I do ultimately think they will move that West Brom match to Wednesday. So United will play probably Sunday, the day after the FA Cup final. It's unfair to West Brom. Yes, they're the collateral damage. They're the one that gets screwed here. But the overwhelming odds are, by then, West Brom will have already been relegated. So does it really matter? And if it does, and you're upset about that, well, West Brom, don't hire Big Sam. You reap what you sow. You're going down now.
Yeah. Well, having said that, though, Paulie, you can say what you want about Big Sam. Until this job, he hadn't ever been relegated before. So I suppose if you are looking for a manager who's good at getting you out of relegation scraps, he is a bit of a go-to. I can't blame him for that. Look,
look, Manish, what if they play in a neutral venue like Wembley? I mean, if you go to Wembley, you're almost glorifying it. And that's almost an advantage to these teams because Wembley Wembley is such a different pitch to everything, especially Old Trafford, that if the more you can play at Wembley, the more acclimated you get to it, the better you are. How many times do we see in the FA Cup semifinal, United go to Wembley and it just looks awful against Chelsea? Everton 10 years ago, City 11 years ago, whatever it was. The pitch is heavy. But play it at the Etihad.
If you're looking punishment, Paulie, why not get them to play at Anfield again? Why not take it to Anfield?
So I had a friend who suggested that yesterday, and I'm laughing because I was like, yeah, it's not a terrible suggestion. But then if United win their home match at Anfield, like, well, remember all the people in January who were like, Gary Neville being like, it's Anfield. You have to be happy with a point. Well, I'm sitting here being like, there's no fans there. It's not Anfield. And now it's like you'll play a home game and watch United waltz out there, get a 2-0 win. And it's like, well, was this not Anfield this time? Oh, it wasn't? Then why was it Anfield in January?
And if we do go there and win, will it be the sort of people can't say, well, you've not won at Anfield since
exactly
since whenever, if you know what I mean. Does it count as an away win or does it count as a win? I don't know, Paulie. Look, let's talk about some other things going on in football, Paulie, because we spoke now for 47 minutes about protest. Thank you so much for all your comments. Do keep them coming in. We can get back to them if we see something and you want it answering. That's not a problem. Interesting news today about Roma, Paulie, and our ex-manager Jose Mourinho going to Roma. My heart sank a little bit when I first saw it because the only breaking news strap I saw was Jose Mourinho to be new Roma manager. And I'm thinking, right. And then I read on a little bit and it says starting of next season because although we have a 4-goal lead and you wouldn't think Jose is the best manager to come back from a 4-goal lead, it's Jose Mourinho. And I would have worried that something may have gone wrong on Thursday. But interesting that he's got that job, Paulie, really.
Yeah, I think the Italian league's going to be good for him. I think the Italian league was good for him the last time. The Italian media and him didn't see eye to eye. But I think, now to be fair, I said the same thing when he went to Tottenham I think he needs a smaller club like this because he was at his best when he had that us against the world mentality and he had players that had gotten nothing and he galvanized them together and created that underdog mentality. And that's why I thought he'd be good at Tottenham. He did that at first, and then he just let it all fall apart. And he never adapted to the fact that Tottenham would have been a good possession team. He just fell back into his old tropes of, oh, we scored really quickly and we're up 1-0. Let's sit on this lead. But you could do that in Italy. I
love the loyalty of our viewers, Paulie, to our ex-United players. All the comments coming in here are literally about Smalling and Mickey and how it may be sort of a problem for them and they can't catch a break and what it means for their future. We're obviously first of straight away United fans thinking about their ex-players who maybe worked under Jose before. I've got to be honest with you, Mkhitaryan was my first thought, to be honest, because I remember how Jose dealt with him, especially in the early days. So
and United. My hot take on Mkhitaryan is if we still had Henrik Mkhitaryan, the title race would still be going on. I don't think we'd be winning it, but I think it would still be going on. And even at 32, just those moments early in the season where Pogba wasn't firing, and especially in January when Pogba got hurt and Juan Mata was mysteriously absent, if we had Henrik Mkhitaryan in the squad, we would be in a much better place. My one concern about that is if we had Henrik Mkhitaryan last season, he might have been good enough to have convinced the men upstairs to not sign Bruno Fernandes. Things do end up working out for the best. I immediately was like, Henrik Mkhitaryan is definitely on the phone with Juan Mata right now, being like, how do we handle this? What did you do when you escaped this man and he came after you? I know Smalling and him didn't really see eye to eye, but Smalling kept playing. Smalling outlived Mourinho, and he was playing. He started the FA Cup final. I believe he started the Europa League final. It's not like he was thrown as under the. It's not like he was Luke Shaw.
No.
Under Mourinho.
I think he did have a little bit of a go at Smalling at one point. I think when he was returning from an injury, I think he was one of those players he questioned.
He said, "Oh, he's not playing through an injury," and it was like the guy's hurt. And he made that quip. I mean, Smalling's the one that scored the winner in the Paul Pogba derby. So Smalling's had some success under him, but really, if you're United, I mean, look, Roma's not hiring him right now because they're down by 4 goals. And they know, oh, well, we need to attack United. You're not the guy to do it. Even though you did beat them 6-1 this year, you're not the guy to attack them to come back from 4 goals down. And Ollie's got the upper hand on you. I find it funny that they are not even in the Europa League next year. They are competing. They have to hold on to a spot in the Europa Conference. So Jose could go by a year from now. We could be looking at Jose Mourinho being the first manager to have won the Champions League, the Europa League, be fired from the Super League, and win the conference. And boy, is that a belt that he will gloat about.
Sorry, I do find it, I do think there's probably something on Jose's side as well, looking at Roma's predicament with 4 games to go in Serie A and this second leg in the Europa League, saying, well, I'm pretty happy not taking it until next season either, because it's pretty much what's the expression that you lose? It's sort of you're fighting a losing battle from day one if he comes in right now, because like you say, Roma haven't really got anything to play for, only things to lose.
Can he even manage Roma in the Europa League, or is he cup tied?
Exactly. Great point. Oh dear. Well, we could make fun. I think carry on.
They'll go to the Europa Conference. He'll wear that belt like a nice pride and joy. This question from Mimic: how many clubs are still paying Mourinho after firing right now? We are done paying him. Okay. And apparently by taking this job, he has just saved Tottenham 16 million.
Wow.
So as Tottenham said, thanks for that new center back. So that kind of is unfortunate for us, in that Tottenham looked like they were in a real tough predicament that they don't have any money and they're going to pay so much to fire Mourinho. And now they get out of it.
Paulie, I've got to be honest with you, mate. I think Jose's onto something, because I heard something recently about the sort of money he's generated through compensation.
Through getting fired, yeah. Oh,
he has made a lot. Maybe this is the way forward for man. If you are looking to make money from the game, this is the way to do it, Paulie. Sign 3 or 4 year contracts, screw up in a year to 18 months, and get the sack, and you get
I knew the days of Mourinho that we had turned the corner and said, okay, we are no longer getting to the halfway point. We are now counting down to the end of Mourinho, when he signed his contract extension with us, because as soon as he did that, he picked a fight with Paul Pogba. Him and Pogba were totally fine until he signed that contract extension, but he signed a 1-year contract extension, which is the ultimate. I mean, that's just complete bullshit. That's not next. And United were, we now have a long-term. No, you don't. He's going to be here for 4 years. And remember, he was flirting with PSG at the time, and he had 1 foot in the door at PSG. And I was like, all this contract extension does is basically say United are entitled to compensation if you leave next year to go to PSG, and you're entitled to compensation when we fire you next year. It would, and I knew as soon as that happened, and then he picked the fight with Pogba. He was like, I've got my compensation settled. They're going to, now I just have to wait for them to fire me. I mean, he went on the summer tour. All he did was try to get fired. You know, everybody knew it was the World Cup and you don't have your players. And Pep and Klopp, who know how to get players on their side and know how to not cause a stir and pay lip service and just say the right answers, they were like, it's nice having these young players in the squad and working with them. Essentially said, I'm not going to see them this season, but it's nice to get to know new guys this year. Versus Mourinho went, well, what are you looking at me for? None of these guys are going to be the ones that I'm playing with. It's just a completely different thing. But ultimately, Jose, you're going to Roma, and really start doing your homework right now. Take a look at what Serie A is, and look at who just won Serie A. It's a team called Inter Milan, who you happen to have previous experience there, but look at how they did it. They signed a bunch of old Manchester United players who, you know, happen to have worked with you, and perhaps you already have Chris Smalling. He started the FA Cup final. Perhaps maybe his center back partner, the other one who started the FA Cup final, maybe Phil Jones. Why don't you come after him? And the slower pace and the possession of Serie A would be great for a guy who has worked diligently at your side at Chelsea and at United. Why don't you come and take Nemanja Matic while you're here?
Well, I've got a message for Chris Smalling, but, you know, if you are worried right now, Chris, the rumours are United are looking for a more low-key sort of centre-back since signing.
No, Joe, you're getting muted. Get out of here. You get muted for that. No, we are not having the Chris Smalling conversation. We got rid of him because that dude cannot play with the ball at his feet.
He's Spaldini though in Italy, mate. He's Spaldini.
Because he doesn't need to pass out from the back. He doesn't need to play out. But you know who just exposed him last week? Right off a corner kick, Paul Pogba ghosted right into his zone and beat him for a goal. We do not need Chris Smalling.
No, I was only making a plea to Chris on a personal level. If he wants to go out.
But Chris, please get your best friend Philip and get him to come down here. You could take Nemanja Matic. I'm sorry, Jose, you're not getting McTominay. If we sign a midfielder, McTominay becomes an invaluable squad player, so you're not getting him. And if there's one person who the Italian game would not suit in any way, shape, or form, it's probably Scott McTominay.
No, to be honest with you, Paulie, it was. I don't disrespect any of our old players. It's not my style at all. But I think Chris Smalling showed exactly why we sold him last Thursday. I thought his performance, unfortunately for him, was not great. I mean, when you return to your former club, you want to make an impression. You want to do well. Obviously, you want to try and prove your old employers wrong. But there was 2 or 3 goals. Obviously, he gave the penalty away, obviously, but a couple of the other goals that he looked like the Chris Smalling that we sold. And for as good as he's been over in Italy, and I'm pleased that he's done well for himself, he showed why he's not at that level.
Yeah. Speaking of Thursday, Joe, let's wrap up the show by looking at our poll question. We had a poll question this week.
Well, rapid fire, aren't we? Look, time's just gone away from us, hasn't it? Now, I always think that you put these questions up for a reason, Paulie, and we haven't had one for a little while, so I think there's some method in your madness here. So you asked us, obviously, about, it was a real simple one. Should Marcus Rashford start against Roma on Thursday? Look, Paulie, unanimously people said no, and I'll be honest with you, I was one of those people that said no, but you can be quite controversial at times, and like I said, there's probably a reason you put this poll up there. What's your thoughts on this? I mean, everything says no, but obviously we haven't had a game at the weekend now that we was obviously expecting to have, were we? So what do you think happens here, and what's your thoughts?
My thought is no, he shouldn't start, but he will. I almost think we're going to see an unchanged 11 against Roma. Maybe Matic starts, but I've been saying that I said that last week, but maybe Matic starts. Perhaps maybe Pogba or Cavani don't, although Cavani not being in the we did get a nice little glimpse there of that team sheet against Liverpool. So we knew Cavani was being rested for Roma, but that just goes to show you 6-2 and Cavani is being rested for Roma after we needed him to beat Liverpool in the FA Cup. He's on the bench to be rested. That's how seriously Ollie is taking the second leg. He is not messing around.
No, he was never going to go weak.
It is going to be like a full strength squad. Stick on Ahmad. Ahmad has not started a single game for United. The time to start someone is not the second leg of a semifinal, or in this case, the Europa League, the UEFA Super Cup quarterfinal.
I think you could see Mata. I think it might be a good game.
I think you'll see Ahmad, and I think you'll see Mata. I think you'll see them all. If it's 0-0 at halftime, that's a pretty comfortable lead to be sitting on. If you've scored a goal in the first half, that's an even more comfortable lead to be sitting on. But Ollie is not going to go out there and say, we're going to let a bunch of youngsters and inexperienced guys play. And if, God forbid, the tide turns the wrong way and they concede 2 quick goals, and now I got to take them off and shatter their confidence, that's not going to happen. He'll bring them on in the second half. It's going to be a strong squad, but then again, but he will take them off. I think Marcus. I think you could play 10 of your first choice starters and leave Marcus Rashford off because you do need to win games at home on the back end. A win against Aston Villa secures top 4. A draw against Aston Villa and a win against Leicester guarantees a second place. All we have to do is beat Leicester and get another point. Oh, no, we have to draw the rest of our games. So a win against Villa and a win against Leicester guarantees a second place. So go out there and do that. And then you could rest Marcus Rashford all the way until the UEFA Super Cup semifinal.
Yeah, and they definitely will do. I think as soon as they're happy with it, second place, and obviously, top 4 is as good as they're now. Second place, top 4 secure, probably. They've got to wrap Rashford up in cotton wool because he'll be in. We know Ollie's going to want to play him in that final. For me, he's his favourite player. You've only got to look at the amount that he's used him since, while he's been injured. He's always managed to get him into the team anyway. Really good point. Look, Paulie, we had got a couple of other things that we want to talk about, but I'm sure that they'll wait until another show. Obviously, we've got a game on Thursday, so we won't be doing it, but we will be back with you next Tuesday. There are rumours that Edison Cavani is close to signing a new contract or maybe just extending his stay, so we can discuss that next week. Paulie, you never know. By then, we'll have probably had an official announcement, so we're probably best to speak about that then, because some of the rumours are that it might even be another new contract in terms of it may not just be him having that other year. He might sign another year with another year, if you know what I mean. So we'll discuss that more when we have something official on that. But that's about all we've got time for. Thanks so much today for all your interactions and your comments. It's nice to know that you guys are behind this movement as well. Look, let's be clear. We would all want these guys out of the club, but the message has to be clear. The message has to be a unified message. That's something else that we didn't really get time to talk about today. There's still fractions within the fan base that need to come together. We need to do this. And it can't just stop at one protest that postpone one game. There has to be more, but it has to be planned and it has to be done right. And it has to be visible to the owners so it has a desired effect. Thanks for joining me, Paulie, as always, mate, and giving your thoughts. Love doing the show with you. And until next week, I hope you all have a great week. Enjoy some football, hopefully on Thursday. I don't see that game getting postponed, so I think we should be okay to enjoy a game on Thursday. And then obviously Aston Villa at the weekend, I think should be fine as well. And we will see you next Tuesday on the Happy Hour. Take care, guys.